What is good, guys, and welcome to today's video. I wanted to do something a little bit different today, and that is kind of like a full build breakdown of my S15 and also tell you guys what are my future plans with this build-wise, drivetrain-wise. Are we going to keep the SR20? Am I going to keep experimenting with the chassis and other things like that? And the main reason for that is there's a lot of new people on the channel today. People that don't really understand much about this S15, how it came about, what exactly makes it a Yashio Factory spec S15, how is it so reliable with factory internals yet still pushing 400 PS here in Japan, and I guess everyone I haven't really told what my future plans are with the car and build-wise and stuff like that. So I figured we could kind of combine those two things together and give you guys a little bit of a dedicated video on the S15. For any of you guys that want to know some more in-depth information about this car, this is the video for you. So let's jump into it. So I think the best place to start is definitely the exterior of the car, and let's start with the color first, because I get a lot of people asking about what's the color code, how do you get this color, and everything like that. So this is just a standard candy pink color here in Japan. We don't really know what the paint code is or anything like that, and even if you did generate a paint code from this, it would be so hard to replicate, it's not funny. The reason for that is being a candy color, it depends on the base coat under it, how thick you spray it, and also you can't just like spray this in different times. The hood is a perfect example of that. You can see that's a completely different color compared to everything else, even though the same paint and everything was mixed up and everything, just painted at a different time, and that's what you get. So how it works is you do a white undercoat, then you spray the candy paint, and depending on how thick you spray the paint with the color under it, the undercoat coming through, is how you get like that different kind of pop in the pink. Like you can see here, like the hood, for example, is a lot lighter because it probably should have had a thicker candy of the pink painted on there compared to like the bumper, the fenders, and the rest of the body and stuff like that. You can obviously also see if a little bit here depending on the light, but you can see the side skirts also are a little bit of a different shade pink, and it's just a very difficult color to work with. In hindsight, it's probably not the best color to paint your car, but it stands out so well, you might as well. And in all honesty, it's actually not that expensive to get your whole entire car sprayed, especially if it's a drift car and you don't care about it too much. You can get this thing painted pretty quickly and cheaply here in Japan. Now, all of that aside, looking at the body kit, this is the Yashio Factory Golf Aero, and this is not the Golf R though, because the Golf R Aero has extra over fenders that come out and down even further here, and that's not only on the front but the rear. You also have in the fenders that come down here, the over fenders, they come out here wider and then come around the front here and give you this whole extra width here in the front bumper. You've seen that on a lot of Oka-chan's cars. Pretty much all of his cars have the Golf R, but what we wanted to do with this car is start with the base Golf Aero and work our way up. So G-U-L-F, Golf, it's not like G-O-L-F like the sport, but it does kind of sound similar. So the Golf Aero is really nice and aggressive. I love how wide it is even in its base form. Obviously, if you have the Golf R, it's way more aggressive and you can fit a lot wider wheels and setups and stuff like that on it. So we'll be putting the Golf R on this pretty much after I get the hang of the chassis, because if you have the Golf R and you're not confident and you crash a bit, you're going to damage those over fenders very easily because of obviously the extra width. And down here they come out pretty low. You also get another little bit of an extension here on the front too. But anyways, that's the aero, that's the paint down. We should probably look at this rear wing. I know a lot of people have asked about this. Oka-chan sells multiple different wings, a GT carbon style wing, this wing, and then the ducktail wing for the Golf Aero. We went for this one just because I think it looks like a freaking fighter jet or something. I love it. I think it's sick. It kind of looks like the factory wing, but with risers and extenders, and I just think it makes the car look great. I love my wing game, you guys know that. These tail lamps, very similar to the D-Max ones. These were original Yashio Factory ones before everyone started getting them made out of Taiwan and copying the same design. So many different companies sell these now, it's not even funny. Unfortunately though, even though these were brand new and old stock, I need to pull them apart, dry them out, and re-silicone them up and cork them up, because this one's getting some moisture in there, which we found out about a week ago, which kind of really sucks. But it's all good. It's pretty easy, quick job to fix. So that aside, that's that. So that's probably the whole entire exterior of the car. We can probably talk about wheels as well. We're running Advan RS2s in the front. It's very hard to get Advan 17-inch wheels that have good sizes available. And we're also running about 30mm of spacer down in there to get this wheel out with enough poke. 17s are super important in the front on a lot of drift cars because it gives you a lot more room for angle kits and mods. You don't hit things and bash things. It's just easier to work with. and obviously probably a bit smarter. In the rear we run 18s, and that's because the drifting tire of, I guess, choice in Japan are 265 35 R18s. And I run 265s daily in this. We don't need a spacer. These are 18 10.5J plus 15 on the rear, so pretty aggressive wheel size, and obviously we get a nice little stretch there out of our 265 35 R18s. These tires are made by Silent. They're a really cheap tire. You can get them for $50 a pop. I literally get 4 of these tires for $200. It's insane how cheap 265s are in Japan, and everyone tells me that the reason why 265s are cheaper than 235s and other sizes is because that's the motorsport tire here in Japan. They sell the most of them, so they make them cheaper because they sell more quantity. So anyways, that aside, let's get to the engine bay. So here's the engine bay, and let's try to go over everything quickly. So SR20 2 litre, it's stock. It's got very low kilometers on it though. This whole entire chassis has only 37,000 kilometers on it. It's pretty much I guess a virgin car, but the funny thing is this was used literally in drifting competitions in Japan before I got it. And then it sat for 10 years, and then that's when I got it. So the fact that this thing is so healthy is just kind of mind-blowing to me, but also it's got low mileage, so I'm not also surprised. Head spec-wise, let's go over everything that's been done. Rocker stoppers, none. We do not put rocker stoppers in our SRs in Japan. They actually cause way more damage and more harm than good. If a rocker's going to slip off and go flying, it will happen whether or not you have rocker stoppers or not. Rocker stoppers don't stop them from coming off, because if a rocker's going to come off, it will come off. It'll hit the rocker stoppers, bend and break everything around there, smash the rocker to pieces, send pieces of metal through your engine, and practically you could even end up needing a new head because of the damage it's going to cause. So do not put rocker stoppers in your SR. Big no-no. Stop doing it, people. They don't help. I'm so frustrated that companies even sell them. It's ridiculous, but very well known. Just look at Naoki Nakamura. He preaches it all the time. Anyone else with an SR will tell you the same thing. So anyways, rocker stoppers aside, a little bit of a tangent there. We have HKS step-on cams. The valve train in this is actually stock. There's no like changes to springs or anything like that. It's stock, just HKS step-1 cams. Really good cam, and arguably better than step 2 options. So unless you're going to step 3, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, stick to step 1. That's where it's at. We have, I guess, moving down, we've got a Yashio Factory water pulley. These are very important on SRs. It's actually a bigger size than factory, and what that means is at higher RPMs, it's spinning a little bit slower, which stops cavitation and air bubbles and foam from forming, so it keeps water flowing through everything, trying to keep your SR cooler, which is important on a drift car. A lot of people ask me when they buy this, what size belt to get. Look, you don't actually need to get a bigger size belt. If you undo the tensioner on your alternator and push it all the way in, it's a bit tight, but you can you can get the factory size belt on there without needing a bigger size, and then you just tighten up your alternator tensioner and it's good to go. So you don't actually need a bigger size belt for that. Everything aside, we have AC in here, power steering, all of that jazz, all stock. We've got a front intercooler kit on here, which is a Blitz intercooler front mount kit. These are the most recommended kits to put on your S chassis in Japan. For some reason, Blitz just makes stuff really, really well when it comes to the front mount intercooler. It comes with everything you need and it just works perfectly. So definitely recommend that. The instructions are also really, really good for installation. So I have the Blitz intercooler kit from the throttle body down through to here. And then from this side, it gets different and kind of just janky, and we made stuff work. Another important thing, you need to get a smaller size battery, flip it sideways and mount it in here, unless you want to relocate it in the boot, which is something I definitely want to do in the future. Just right now, and our timeline and stuff, we just kind of did it like this. This is actually generally how everyone does it. And then because you lose your washer bottle and everything, you get one of these little washer bottle bags. They're actually kind of cool and handy. You just kind of fill that up with water, and that's where the water comes from for your nozzle sprayers. I also have a water spray kit that sprays water on the radiator and the oil cooler down there, with a tank in the back with a Yashio Factory water spray kit, which I'll show you in a little bit when we get to the interior. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. We have a old school HKS oil cooler kit in there. You can kind of see the cooler here. It's hard to see though, but that's that there. You can see the piping goes down through here as well. Braided lines covered with some plastic shielding to stop them rubbing and causing any issues. But overall, very, very factory setup. Getting to the hot side here, is where things get a little bit interesting. This was the very first HKS GT top mount turbo kit that they sold. This runs essentially, you can see here there's a little badge on the turbo here, and it just says HKS GT turbine kit. But what this actually is, you can see Garrett's branded on the compressor housing there, and essentially it's a 2835. Very responsive. It's an old T2 flange as well, which blows my mind that they had a top mount turbo kit that was T2 flanged, because the manifold then, like, even if I wanted to replace this turbo, trying to find another turbo to replace it that has a T2 flange is just mind blowing. I'll probably have to cut it off and put a V-band on there or something. Anyways, that aside, very, very responsive kit actually. We get full boost at pretty much 4,500 RPM, 4,000 RPM, which is really good for an SR. So I'm really happy with that. It's actually insane, like in the Skyline getting full boost at like 4,500 RPM feels laggy, but in this, because the SR's like got so much torque down low, when the turbo comes on, it's just like instant. It's so quick to get up to that RPM range. And so yeah, anyways, super responsive, love it, but we do have plans to change that in the future. Going down, we got a nice wrapped up downpipe for heat management and stuff like that. And it's pretty much then 3-inch all the way through to a full Yashio Factory titanium exhaust, which comes out the back to a really nice tip, and it actually sounds amazing. I love this exhaust, it's great. We also have a wastegate that vents to atmosphere down the bottom, which we'll try to show you, but I don't know if the lighting's gonna be good enough. Let's light this puppy up a bit. You can see down there, nice big wastegate. You can see the the dump just kind of goes down there, down the side of the gearbox, and out she blows. It's hard to see, but down there you can kind of just see it. Anyways, sounds epic. That's why I always say hits gate. Now the problem with that is in Japan, some competitions, especially once you get to D1 lights, you're not allowed external wastegates. Go figure. Well, that vent to atmosphere. So we will have to set up something where on the street and like grassroots comps, I want the gate venting to atmosphere, but when we're competing in D1 lights and stuff like that in the future, we'll have to have a thing where we can just put in a little V-band thing that goes to the exhaust system, and then she'll be right. But anyways, that aside, that's kind of the hot side rundown and everything there. I'm just trying to think if I've missed anything. I missed some of the most important stuff. So R35 GTR airflow meter. It's very important that the piece that it goes into here, the adapter, is no bigger than 80 millimeters. If you have a 90 millimeter intake pipe that this goes into, it can't read air accurately going into the engine, and your ECU is going to have a bunch of issues, whether or not you've got an aftermarket one or not. You're going to have a lot of issues with a 90 millimeter pipe if that's in. So always stick to 80 millimeter if you're doing anything like this with a 35 airflow meter. Very common mistake a lot of people make. So there's that. Then we're running Nismo 740cc injectors. And that's pretty much it, I think, engine bay wise. Pump, we've got a Nismo 275 litre per hour pump, and that's pretty much everything, I guess, like bolt-on mods wise. And then we've kind of got our alloy piping that goes to the turbo through here, which we're using probably an assortment of 4 different couplers, silicon couplers to that. We are planning to attack that at a later date and make a much nicer piping through there, and we'll go from there. Now, interior-wise, we tried to keep things as clean and as nice as possible because we want this to be a proven concept of a really good street car that's comfortable, but also competition standards here in Japan for a lot of street, kind of like D1 light stuff. So we got a full Saito roll cage bolted in here, and it's not one that comes in front of the dash, it goes in behind the dash. You can see nice little neat cuts there where it goes through. We are supposed to have some padding on the front here and the top and the sides, which we will add when we go and take the car for shucking again in another year and a half or so. It's really easy though. There's this really kind of compact padding you can put on with like just little clips and things, so that'll look really good. But yeah, as you can see, dash is fairly clean. I don't have a bunch of gauges up anywhere, which is really great. We're running a Yashio Factory water temp meter version 2, and this is the one that came with no OBD plug-in kit. So when Oka-chan sold these initially, there was 2 options: an OBD kit where it just plugged into the OBD like console port down here. But if you see, where is it? Where's mine? Here it is. Mine isn't plugged into anything. It's available there still for something to be plugged into. And that's because this actually was like a manual one where it came with sensors and everything. You'd wire it in. You got a little switch here and stuff, and you could switch between active sensors. So this actually has 2 sensors connected to it right now, but it can have up to 4. And essentially, if we just turn the ignition on, I'll show you. Number 1 on the dial here is water. Number 2 is oil, which evidently are apparently the same the same degrees right now. Go figure. But yeah, 1 is water and 2 is oil, and then 3 and 4 I can add a couple more temperature sensors if I needed to, but we don't need to, so that's fine for me for now. And I love the nostalgic kind of like vibes that this gives off, because it's kind of like an old radio clock kind of digital display, so I'll probably never get rid of that. But moving else into the interior, we've got a nice Pioneer double DIN head unit, which was something I got out of the States. We got our ETC card reader, which you guys don't really care about. This is where things get a little bit fun. We moved the HKS EVC like control unit here, plus the water sprayer kit here, and this is set up to essentially go off at a certain RPM and spray water on the radiator and the oil cooler. So once I hit, say, 6,000, 5,000 RPM, when I activate it by turning on this switch, it'll always just spray water once I pass that RPM range, and constantly keep water on those things to keep them cool while I'm drifting. I literally, sometimes I can just constantly keep hot lapping this thing. It's actually insane. I can hot lap this thing non-stop, especially in winter. Like, I mean, the only thing I do cool down laps for are my tires now. It's so reliable, this car. And then everything else about the interior, you can see the actual display here for the HKS EVC boost controller, which just gives you information about, you know, warns you if you've hit too much boost, and that's essentially where you tell it to have all its warning parameters and stuff like that, like the gauge face, I guess. Anyways, that's kind of it interior-wise. We don't have seat belts in the back, but I keep the seats in to keep it looking clean, and just kind of like deaden some noise, because we do have some solid mounts in the rear end. So yeah, I just keep the seats there. Makes it look nice, and technically I guess I could throw someone in the back there, but you know, no seatbelt, so I can't really legally do that. I nearly forgot to talk about the Brid seat that's in this thing. A lot of people just call these Brid Lomaxes, but this is actually a Geas or Geas. It's pronounced a few different ways depending on where you're from, just like the brand name. It's either Brid or Bride, right? Anyways, all of that aside, this one actually is a little bit different. It has some different padding and stuff built into the chair, and this is like a Yashio Factory version of the seat. So you've got a bit more back support here, which is really, really good, especially for me as a tall, lanky guy. So that really helps out. I don't get a sore back or anything like that with the coilovers and the kind of little bit, it feels, I mean, when you put coilovers in a car, you're going to have a little bit of a stiffer ride when it comes to hitting bumps and stuff like that, so kind of helps out there. We've obviously got Oka-chan's little spin turn knob is what this is called. In Japan, like doing 180 turns or handbrake turns, they're called spin turns, so they call this a spin turn knob. And what I like about this is it's not just like comes to a flat thing here that you flick up, it's actually still rounded. It's really comfortable, and I've never seen anyone else make the drift buttons like he does, and it actually works and feels a lot better like moving it in and out than what those traditional ones do with just a flat face there. So I actually really recommend these for anyone. And then obviously we've got the Yashio Factory shift knob and boot kit, which is just a really good option for your shifter. It's really comfortable, looks sexy, a little bit of pink stitching and stuff like that. Can't really go wrong with it. It's super nice. I think the next thing we need to talk about is suspension. We are running Yashio Factory great spec coilovers in here, which the main strut is made by DG5. Then we have super soft rated Swift springs with then Oka-chan settings and preloads and stuff like that. And obviously the height is kind of set level all the way around, and then we align everything up. So the best thing about these as well is the face top plates here. You have a lot of adjustability. You can actually take this nut out here and move it back even more to then get this closer to the strut limit there. So initially by stock, you could only move it like to here, and then you take the nut out, move it back to here, then you could slide it even more further to get a whole like 6 to 7 degrees of camber, which is actually pretty epic. And if you've got a whole bunch of toe there as well, this thing's set up for some high-speed entries and super grippy and feels great. I've never driven a car that felt this set up, and it's insane when I drift it. Even when I let friends and stuff who are very experienced drivers take this thing for a drive, they can't get over how gripped up this thing feels and how awesome it is to drive and drift. This is gonna look so ridiculous here, but I just wanna see like what it would look like if we had that sitting there. Oh yeah, that's ridiculous. Oh boy, that's such a big turbo, even though in the grand scheme of things it's actually kind of a small turbo, but damn, that looks huge there. Anyways, so I guess it's time for us to talk about future plans with the SR and what I want to do with this. So all jokes aside, I got the G30 770 for the Skyline off the top of that because I was scared it was just going to slip and damage my valve cover. But all of that aside, my plans for the SR are essentially to stick with the standard S15 VCT SR until it blows. So things with the turbo and the hot side, I definitely do want to change that up about probably mid-year, maybe just after mid-year this year. I want to go for a Garrett G25 setup, get this thing spooling a lot quicker than what this does, because if it feels insane now and that thing's not getting full boost till 4,000, 4,500 RPM, and that feels responsive on an SR, imagine what a G25 is going to feel like on this thing. So G25 660 is probably what I want to do with this, and what I'm going to actually do is donate this hot side to someone in Okajuku who has a lot of potential but just doesn't have a lot of money and funds and stuff like that. So we'll probably do something special and show you guys who it is and that kind of thing later on. You guys don't actually see him much because of the fact of he's still a student and studying and doesn't have much money to hang out with us, but he has the most insane potential to do well in both time attack and drifting. It's actually insane. So I think if he gets something like that to be able to, you know, get his car a little bit faster, a bit more horsepower and stuff, and he starts competing, he's going to do really, really well. So anyways, that aside, so yeah, halfway through the year, we're going to probably go for a Garrett G25 660 setup and kind of tidy up a whole bunch of things there, also changing to full link engine management and some stuff there. That aside though, we're probably only going to be doing like a metal head gasket and studs on the SR just to make things a little bit more reliable, because we do still only have factory studs and factory head gasket on this. Oka-chan's really smart with how he does his tuning on these, and he makes sure that there's not a whole bunch of timing until the top end. So like when it comes through the mid-range and the turbo kicks on and stuff, it's not like a sudden kind of shock to the system and causing problems. We may end up maybe putting some forged rods and pistons in there depending when we do the head gasket, how things are looking. But just something to keep this thing reliable with the G25 setup and stuff, because I'd like it to last at least a year after that of constant abuse. Once we kind of, you know, if I'm having a lot of rocker arm issues and stuff, that's when I'm probably going to be going enough with the VCT S15 head. Let's get that off and start looking at going down the VET route. I do 100% want to run a P11 head on this with all the stuff from like MazWorks, get this thing up to spec and not have any rocker arm issues and just go nuts with power on the S15 on the SR engine. I think they have a lot of potential, and I think that, you know, the same kind of thing happened with the RBs. You had your RBs 25 Series 1 and Series 2, and then they kind of did a Series 3, but they never called it a Series 3. They just called it the Neo 6, the one that made it into the GTT 34s. That motor killed it and was the most reliable RB25 that they ever produced. The VCT was like next level and all that kind of stuff, so it was like the best of everything combined, and a whole bunch of years of research and development put into the engine that fixed so many issues it wasn't funny. And they did that with the SR, but instead of putting it in rear-wheel drive applications and continuing the Silvia line, they dumped it in like P11s and what else? Like freaking X-Trails and stuff here in Japan, which just makes no sense to me. And they also did it in some Pulsars in a DE non-turbo application. So anyways, that aside, I want to muck around with that head on one of these blocks, do some cool stuff, rear-wheel drive. I mean, it's been proven before that an SR with forged internals and one of those heads can produce 1,000 horsepower without any rocker arm issues, because it uses like the kind of Honda style in the head with the rockers with bars going through it and stuff, which is really reliable. So anyways, I do want to do a VET build on this, so keep an eye out for that in the, I mean, not so distant future, I guess, probably a couple years or a year or so. Just depends, because like, I'm the type of person where if something starts happening a lot and it frustrates me, then I'm just going to pull the pin and deal with the problem in the most craziest way possible and completely eradicate the issue so it'll never happen ever again. So if we start popping rocker arms like this week and next week and it keeps happening, then it's going to probably happen this year. But anyways, that aside, my bank account says no right now, so yeah. Plans for this VET build with really responsive turbo setup, and that's where we want to leave it. If I start going crazy and I want to get into some big comps over here and I want to keep playing with the SR, depending on budget, sponsors and things like that, I would be interested in doing something stupid with a billet block. But at the same time, my really end goal with this car would be a VR38 from a 35 Skyline. That would be my dream kind of comp S15 setup. I mean, you could just go and slap a 2JZ in there, and I might do that temporarily for a little bit, depending on funds and stuff like that. But my goal would be totally a VR38 setup S15. And that's my plans. Hope you guys enjoyed. I know this is going to be a massive long video of me talking, and we just kind of hanged out in the driveway and I showed you everything on the S15. But I'm sure you guys all appreciated the information and the rundown. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. smash that like button. I need to emphasize that a little bit more. Also, don't forget about the comp to win the mystery bag. Get yourself some SAMMIT merch every item you purchase. So if you get like a sticker pack of 5 stickers, that's 5 entries. Entry ends on Friday. Also, I'm going to put the link to the Patreon there. You guys are getting exclusive information about builds and as things happen and all that kind of stuff on the Skyline way before any videos will tell you what's going on. So if you want to support the channel that little bit extra more and get some incentives for it, go check out the Patreon. Peace out, guys. Ja mata.